In today's video, we will explore a lesser-known aspect of the samurai, the legendary warriors of Japan, whose image has been deeply embedded in people's minds. When mentioning samurai, you likely think of warriors with sharp katana swords, the spirit of Bushido, and absolute loyalty. But is all of this truly accurate? Could it be that this is just a media narrative designed to build a perfect image of the samurai? You may be surprised to learn that much of what people think about samurai is merely a facade, a tool used by filmmakers and the media. Let's dive in to discover who samurai really were and whether they truly lived up to the noble image we have admired. When it comes to samurai, the first image that comes to mind is often of a heroic warrior holding a sharp sword. However, if someone is skilled only in swordsmanship, they wouldn't yet be considered a true samurai. During the golden age of the samurai class, the most important skill was not swordsmanship, but Kyuba no michi, gongma no dao, in Japanese. The term Kyuba, gongma, means bow, gong, and horse, ma. Michi, dao, means the way. This term clearly reflects that to be a true samurai, one had to not only excel in combat, but also be proficient in horseback riding and archery. Imagine a feudal battle. A samurai skilled in swordsmanship, no matter how excellent, would struggle against an opponent shooting arrows from horseback with superior speed and range. The bow and arrow were crucial weapons. They allowed samurai to attack from a distance, creating a strategic advantage before the enemy could close in. The horse was not only a fast mode of transportation, but also the foundation that helped the samurai maintain strategic positions and avoid danger on the battlefield. A person who only knows how to wield a sword, without the skills of archery or horseback riding, is much like a soldier in the modern era lacking a firearm. The transformation of the samurai and the legend of the sword. Did you know that the image of the samurai with their katana sword is not always accurate? This began to change in the 16th century when Japan started to engage with and be influenced by the West. The arrival of firearms brought about a revolution in warfare, rendering the bow, once the symbol of the samurai class, obsolete. Firearms and the end of Kyuba no michi. With firearms, simply put, the faster shooter wins. People no longer needed years of practice to master archery because a Western matchlock gun could be used effectively on the battlefield in just a few months. If you have watched the series Nobunaga on Netflix, you'll see images of Nobunaga Oda's army using Tanegashima matchlock guns, firing thunderous shots that completely changed the dynamics of warfare. After Nobunaga, it was the turn of Hideyoshi Toyotomi and Tokugawa Ieyasu to unify Japan, leading the country into a relatively peaceful period under the Tokugawa shogunate. However, peace also meant that the samurai class no longer had wars to showcase their skills, causing them to gradually decline and lose their status. The legend of the sword, a constructed image. When the era of war came to an end, many samurai began to face unemployment. However, with their pride as warriors, they did not want the honor of being a samurai to fade. But how could they define their uniqueness in peacetime when skills like horseback riding and archery no longer held practical value? This is when the image of the katana sword became a symbol. Stories of extraordinary swordsmanship, such as cutting through iron like mud or cutting through bullets, began to emerge, mostly fictional. Samurai who were skilled in swordsmanship were portrayed as noble symbols, representing the unyielding spirit of Bushido. These legends were passed down, becoming part of Japanese history, culture, and art, leading people today to believe that the true samurai were masters of the sword. However, the reality is, an early samurai was not evaluated based on swordsmanship, but rather on their skill in archery and horseback riding. The katana only became a symbol when the samurai lost their role as warriors in peacetime. Conclusion. A true samurai must represent Kyuba no michi, a well-rounded warrior with excellent skills in horseback riding and archery. Secret number 2. The truth about samurai. The highly practical mercenaries. Samurai have long been idealized in films and popular culture, often portrayed as noble warriors, loyal, and honor-bound. But is that always the case? The truth is, many samurai were simply mercenaries, living and working based on money, not loyalty. The main sources of income for samurai. During wartime, samurai served feudal lords, daimyo, in exchange for land and status. After the arrival of peace, they no longer participated in warfare, but still needed to sustain their lives. To do this, samurai relied on two main sources of income. One, land leasing. While serving in the military, samurai were awarded large plots of land. However, because they only knew how to fight and not farm, they rented the land to farmers and collected annual taxes. This was a passive income source, but not the primary one. 2, mercenary work. The main occupation of samurai in times of peace was working as mercenaries. Whoever hired them, they fought for, regardless of whether that person was a lord, a farmer, or anyone else with the means to pay. Practicality over loyalty. The story of the samurai's absolute loyalty is true only for a few exceptional individuals, such as Hattori Hanzo, a legendary figure in Japanese history. The majority of samurai followed a very simple principle. Whoever paid more, they served. For example, a lord. A hires a samurai to attack Lord B for 2 gold coins. But right afterward, the samurai could turn to Lord B, reveal Lord A's plans, and offer to protect Lord B as long as he paid a higher price. Such stories were not rare. They show that loyalty was not a common trait among samurai. Honor and loyalty were often used as a facade or a tool to create a polished image, especially when the samurai class began to decline in peacetime. The myth of loyalty. Why do we have the impression that samurai were such loyal warriors that they would commit seppuku, ritual suicide, for their honor? This is the result of centuries of romanticizing the samurai image through literature, folklore, and historical books often recorded rare examples of loyalty, such as the 47 Ronin, Chushingura. Art and cinema. Many films like Nobunaga or Samurai have built the image of an ideal warrior class, steeped in myth. In reality, absolute loyalty was merely a fabricated story. The majority of samurai in the feudal era were pragmatic mercenaries, valuing material benefits over any moral principles. There were a few exceptions, such as Hattori Hanzo, who left a positive image of loyalty and honor in history. But if we look at the bigger picture, samurai were professional warriors, driven by practical values rather than noble ideals. Part 3. The Bushido spirit, a product of literature. When we think of the Bushido spirit, we often associate it with noble values like benevolence, righteousness, wisdom, trust, loyalty, honor, and the willingness to sacrifice for the country. But did you know that this entire idea didn't actually originate during the samurai's golden age? Instead, it is a literary creation from the late 19th century. The origin of Bushido spirit. In 1899, a Japanese-American author named Inazo Nitobe wrote the famous book Bushido, The Soul of Japan. This work not only introduced Japanese culture but also attempted to idealize the image of the samurai in order to help Western audiences better understand Japan. Interestingly, the book was written in English for a Western audience. It wasn't until 1905 that it was translated into Japanese and published in Japan. The book turned Bushido into a system of ethics with humane and lofty values. However, what Nitobe wrote was not the historical truth about samurai, but rather an idealized version suitable for the modern society of that time. The truth about samurai in the past. Contrary to the idealized image presented in Bushido, the samurai class during the feudal era did not live according to values like benevolence, righteousness, wisdom, trust, or absolute loyalty. True samurai were pragmatic warriors, skilled in horseback riding and archery. They did not respect those who were only skilled in swordsmanship, often considering them lower-ranking warriors. Many samurai were simply mercenaries, working for whoever paid the most. The image of the noble, loyal samurai, willing to sacrifice themselves for their lord, is, in fact, a myth constructed later, largely thanks to Nitobe's work. Literature and the molding of history. After Bushido, The Soul of Japan was published in Japan. The Japanese government realized that the values in the book were very suitable for educating the people and shaping national ideology. Especially during and before World War II, the Bushido spirit became an effective propaganda tool. Think of the kamikaze suicide squads, Japanese pilots who were willing to fly their planes into American warships during intense battles. They were taught that sacrificing for the country was the highest expression of the Bushido spirit. Ironically, this spirit originated from a book written by a Japanese-American author, Bushido and American Influence. Interestingly, America not only introduced the Bushido philosophy, but also had a deep impact on Japan in many areas, from economics and culture to military strategy. If you're interested, leave a comment, and I'll create a series of articles or videos about how America influenced Japan, from the Meiji Restoration to today.